Millionaire weds plus-size woman on a bet, and is stunned when. David Sterling, a man of immense wealth and often characterized by his arrogance, found himself consenting to a wager that would utterly transform his existence in unforeseen ways. He was accustomed to perpetual victories, whether in the realm of commerce or personal pursuits, and the thrill of competition profoundly energized him. But when his close friend Mark presented an audacious challenge at an extravagant gathering in New York, David's interest was piqued. Mark, a smirk playing on his lips, articulated the proposition, "Let's see if you can truly conquer this one, David. I contend you lack the audacity to enter into matrimony with a woman who distinctly deviates from your typical preferences." David, whose reputation for exclusively associating with women of striking beauty was well known, was momentarily taken aback. Yet, perpetually eager to demonstrate his capabilities, he raised an eyebrow inquisitively and posed the question, "And what, precisely, is the reward?" With a playful grin, Mark elevated his champagne flute and declared, $1 million to the triumphant party. But, you must truly wed her and remain in that marital state for a minimum of 6 months. David, feeling the exhilarating surge of competitive spirit and the allure of a substantial financial incentive, agreed without a moment's hesitation. The individual Mark had in mind was Chloe Adams, a plus-size woman who did not conform to prevailing standards of conventional attractiveness. David was unacquainted with her, but to him, this was merely another transaction to secure a win. Days later, David received additional particulars concerning Chloe. She was described as self-assured, fiercely independent, and possessing an unyielding will, a stark contrast to the pliable women David typically encountered. This very fact intensified his intrigue. Accustomed to exercising absolute dominance, he pondered how he would manage an individual who refused to bend to his volition. Their initial encounter transpired at an opulent dining establishment. Upon Chloe's arrival, David immediately noted how profoundly different she was from anyone he had previously met. She possessed a noticeable fullness in her figure, yet appeared entirely unfazed by the luxurious setting or by David himself. Instead, she met his gaze with unwavering self-confidence. "You must be David Sterling," Chloe stated directly, as she took her seat with a composed grace that belied her size. "And you, I presume, are Chloe Adams," David responded with a controlled smile, extending his hand. She paused for a brief moment before grasping it firmly, her grip conveying her resolute determination. "Let us not equivocate," Chloe began, her tone straightforward. "I am fully aware of our purpose here. I understand the wager, its stipulations, and the overarching conditions." David was surprised by her bluntness but expertly concealed any outward reaction. "And yet, you still consented to meet?" he inquired, genuinely curious about her underlying motivations. Chloe paused for a moment before providing her response. "Let's simply state I possess my own compelling reasons. I'm not naive, David. 6 months may appear to be a brief duration, but a substantial amount can transform within that time frame. If you harbor any illusions of manipulating or controlling me, you are profoundly mistaken." David smiled. Chloe was proving to be a far greater challenge than he had initially foreseen, a development that only served to make the situation more captivating for him. As their inaugural meeting drew to a close, David found himself increasingly captivated by Chloe. She was unlike any woman he had ever encountered. Despite her fuller physique, she displayed no fear of him, a quality that profoundly piqued his curiosity and even garnered his admiration. Days unfolded, and David found himself consumed by thoughts of how to navigate the subsequent stage. He was accustomed to masterminding every aspect of a game, but now it seemed Chloe possessed her own distinct strategies. Their second rendezvous occurred at a modest coffee shop, a stark departure from the glamorous establishments David typically frequented. Chloe had proposed the location, and David, intrigued, readily assented. He sought to truly comprehend who she was and what compelled her to agree to what appeared to be a transient marital agreement. Upon David's arrival, Chloe was already there, calmly sipping tea with a serene smile. She possessed a comforting presence that went beyond her physical size. She greeted him with genuine warmth, devoid of the coldness that had characterized their initial encounter, yet still exuding that same unshakable self-assurance. "I assumed you favored five-star restaurants," Chloe playfully teased as David sat down, her ample frame fitting comfortably in the chair. "Occasionally, it is beneficial to deviate from one's routine," David replied, attempting to sound casual, though he felt a slight sense of being outside his comfort zone. They engaged in amiable conversation for a period, exchanging superficial details, but Chloe swiftly addressed the core issue. "If we are truly proceeding with this, I wish to clarify a few essential points," Chloe stated, gently placing her teacup on the table, her movements deliberate and graceful despite her size. "I hold no interest in your financial resources or your opulent lifestyle. 6 months means precisely 6 months, and my intention is to depart from this arrangement precisely as I entered it." David observed her meticulously. He discerned her sincerity. Chloe was the type of woman who knew exactly what she desired and clearly did not view matrimony as a means to ascend the social hierarchy, unlike countless others might, regardless of her appearance. "So, what is your true desire, Chloe?" David inquired, genuinely curious. "Freedom," she responded without a moment's hesitation. "I want you to comprehend that even though we are entering into this contractual agreement, I will not be subjugated by you. I possess my own independent life, and that will not be altered by a temporary marriage." David smiled. It was not the answer he had anticipated, but simultaneously, he found himself entirely amenable to granting Chloe this freedom. To him, matrimony was merely a procedural formality to secure his victory in the wager, and Chloe's size was simply a condition of that bet. If she desired to retain her autonomy, it presented no obstacle. "Agreed," David assented. 6 months hence, we will proceed our separate ways." Chloe observed him for a moment, as if seeking absolute confirmation that he genuinely consented to the terms she had stipulated. She had embraced this challenge with a predetermined strategy, and she was steadfastly resolved to ensure everything unfolded precisely according to her wishes. Deep within, she acknowledged that David might attempt to manipulate the circumstances, yet she also possessed an unwavering trust in her own inner strength to withstand his influence. The meeting concluded on amicable terms, with both individuals departing with their respective roles clearly delineated. Chloe would preserve her independence, and David would ensure that the marriage amounted to nothing more than a formality. But as the days progressed and the scheduled date of their nuptials drew nearer, David found himself unable to shake the unsettling feeling that perhaps this intricate game was not as straightforward as he had initially presumed. The wedding ceremony transpired in a somber, unembellished manner, resembling a meticulously arranged business contract. David Sterling, with his inherently strategic mindset, already perceived himself as the inevitable victor of the wager. He remained utterly convinced that the 6 months would swiftly pass, and that Chloe, despite her plus-size figure and apparent stubbornness, would eventually capitulate to the lavish lifestyle he was poised to offer her. Immediately following the ceremony, David escorted Chloe to his colossal penthouse residence in the bustling heart of New York City, a towering testament to his immense wealth. The expansive glass windows reflected the mesmerizing urban lights, and the interior was adorned with the most exorbitantly priced and exclusive decor. To him, this opulent environment represented the genuine battleground, where he would ultimately conquer Chloe through the overwhelming power of his material domain, regardless of her size. However, from the very first instant, Chloe unequivocally made it clear that she possessed no intention of yielding. The moment she stepped into the penthouse, her presence, though substantial, held a palpable distance. The look she bestowed upon David was not one of admiration, but rather one of defiant challenge. 6 months, David, not a single day more, she stated firmly, walking directly towards one of the massive windows, gazing out at the sprawling city without displaying any hint of being impressed by the surrounding luxury. David smiled, radiating confidence. He was accustomed to this initial resistance. Every woman who had previously entered his life had invariably, eventually, succumbed to his charm and vast fortune. Chloe, he presumed, despite her larger frame, would be no different. Or so he firmly believed. During the initial days following their marriage, David employed every conceivable tactic to impress her. He inundated her with exorbitantly priced jewelry, designer attire, specifically chosen in larger sizes, and luxurious international excursions, all with the unwavering expectation that Chloe would gradually begin to adapt to the opulent lifestyle he dictated. Yet, to his profound frustration, she steadfastly rejected every offering. Chloe adamantly insisted on adhering to her simple, unassuming daily routine, never once succumbing to the allure of wealth's trappings, her ample figure moving with an unexpected agility in their vast apartment. "I don't need these material possessions, David," she would calmly assert, her serenity only serving to intensify his irritation. This persistent defiance profoundly bothered him. David, who had always effortlessly acquired everything he desired, was experiencing his authority directly challenged for the very first time. It was no longer merely about the wager. Now, it was deeply personal. He had to somehow conquer Chloe. He urgently needed to prove that, ultimately, he remained the one in absolute control. It was at this juncture that he began to employ more aggressive tactics. He actively prevented her from attending her professional obligations, offering justifications such as, "You no longer require a paycheck," or, "Consider your inherent role as my spouse." When Chloe adamantly insisted, her considerable presence filling the doorway, he deliberately made her wait for extended hours for meetings she considered vital. David meticulously manipulated schedules, situations, and every conceivable circumstance to meticulously maintain his iron grip on control. Yet Chloe remained unyielding. She was an unshakable bulwark against David's relentless attempts, and that unyielding resistance, coming from someone he initially saw as an unlikely challenge due to her size, only intensified his fervent desire to break her spirit. Their relationship gradually began to transform into a veritable minefield. Minor provocations surfaced in trivial exchanges, where Chloe, employing sharply incisive remarks that belied any preconceived notions about her, expertly diffused every overture David made to instill a sense of inferiority or subjugation within her. On one particularly tense nocturnal occasion, David attempted a more emotionally charged approach. "I cannot comprehend you, Chloe," he stated, staring at her with a blend of profound frustration and genuine curiosity. Any other woman, particularly one in your position, he caught himself, would be overjoyed to inhabit this kind of opulent existence, yet you behave as though it is entirely insufficient. What is your true desire, Chloe? Chloe, who had remained impassive until that precise moment, finally lifted her eyes, and they gleamed with an intensity David had not anticipated. Her very being seemed to radiate a strength that transcended physical appearance. What do I desire? I demand respect, David. I'm not merely a pawn on your strategic chessboard, regardless of my size. You believe you can dominate me with mere financial resources, but you are gravely mistaken. Money does not procure dignity or intrinsic integrity. You may possess all these material possessions surrounding you, but inwardly, you are utterly hollow. And that, David, is precisely what you cannot endure. Her words struck him with the force of a physical blow. For the very first time, David felt a chilling premonition that he might be forfeiting more than mere control. Chloe was not simply resisting his formidable power. She was methodically dismantling the elaborate facade he had painstakingly constructed over many years. And that realization profoundly terrified him. No one had ever challenged his authority in such an unyielding manner, and the inescapable truth that Chloe could perceive beyond his immense wealth, despite societal biases based on her size, made David feel uncomfortably exposed. However, instead of retreating, David resolved to tighten his grip even further. He commenced devising strategies to utterly isolate Chloe, to force her to recognize that without his influence, her life would be immeasurably more arduous. He severed her personal contacts, closed professional avenues that could advance her career, and even deliberately sabotaged significant events she was meticulously organizing. Nevertheless, Chloe, a woman of considerable inner fortitude, was not an individual easily intimidated. With every calculated blow, she rose again, more determined than previously. She steadfastly clung to her inherent dignity, unequivocally refusing to be molded by David's dominating will. And then, one particular night, Chloe executed her own strategic maneuver. "David, you believe you are in complete command, do you not?" she stated, her tone measured. "But what you fail to comprehend is that I, too, possess a meticulously conceived plan. And trust me, when the opportune moment arrives, you will realize this entire intricate game is constructed upon something far more profound than you ever remotely imagined." David stared at her, utterly surprised. For the very first time, he acknowledged that he might have profoundly underestimated Chloe, judging her perhaps by her appearance rather than her intellect and resolve. And for the inaugural time, he experienced the chilling apprehension that, in the end, he might not emerge as the victor of this perilous game. The weeks that followed stretched like a tautly drawn rope, growing progressively tenser with each passing day, poised to snap at any moment. David, consumed by his relentless obsession with maintaining control, employed every conceivable tactic to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Yet Chloe continued to resist, unwavering, unflinching. She was akin to an impregnable fortress he found himself utterly unable to dismantle, her substantial presence in their shared space serving as a constant reminder of his lack of success. Every attempt he made only seemed to paradoxically reinforce her intrinsic strength. However, there was an undeniable truth David could no longer deny. As time continued its inexorable march, he began to perceive Chloe in an entirely different light. It was no longer merely about grudgingly respecting her remarkable resilience, it was something far deeper. She was accomplishing something no other woman had ever achieved. She was emotionally disarming him, and that profound realization left him feeling profoundly uneasy, deeply confused. For the first time, he found himself contemplating her not as a mere component of a wager or a formidable adversary, defined by her size, but as a genuine individual he sincerely desired to comprehend. One particular night, following a heated disagreement, David found himself solitary within the expansive living room, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape through the immense glass windows. The pervasive glow of the urban lights, which once imbued him with an intoxicating sense of power, now felt utterly hollow. He pondered the source of this unsettling emotion. Chloe was merely a woman he had wed for a finite period of 6 months, a condition dictated by a foolish bet involving her plus-size figure. She ought to have remained nothing more than a disposable piece in his elaborate game. Yet the undeniable truth was that she was profoundly stirring something deep within him. He, who had always meticulously controlled his emotional responses, was now being profoundly affected. Chloe possessed the uncanny ability to perceive beyond his carefully constructed facade, and that insight left him feeling utterly vulnerable, regardless of the initial superficial reasons for their union. As David wrestled internally with his tumultuous thoughts, Chloe meticulously adhered to her customary routine. She appeared more distant with each passing day, almost as if she were patiently awaiting some momentous event. David felt as though an invisible, impenetrable wall existed between them, a barrier he found himself utterly incapable of breaching, and this persistent inability tormented him ceaselessly. He remained uncertain whether it was an issue of wounded pride or the profound fear of relinquishing control, but something indefinable about Chloe captivated him in a manner he had never previously believed possible, challenging all his preconceived notions about attraction and connection. "You're different, David," his friend Mark, who had initially proposed the wager involving David marrying a plus-size woman, remarked during a casual dinner. "Normally, you would have every aspect of such a situation under absolute control by now, yet it unequivocally appears that this woman is challenging you in a manner no one else ever has." David offered a forced smile, utterly unable to formulate an immediate response. He detested admitting that Mark's observation was accurate, but it was abundantly clear that something fundamental was undergoing a profound transformation. That night, David returned home with a resolute determination to bring matters to a definitive conclusion. He urgently needed to dislodge Chloe from his thoughts, to unequivocally remind himself that this union was merely a contract, nothing more, a means to win a silly bet about marrying a plus-size woman. As he entered the penthouse, he discovered Chloe seated calmly on the couch, engrossed in a book, utterly unaware of his sudden presence. "May we converse?" David inquired, breaking the profound silence that had become the uncomfortable norm between them. Chloe looked up serenely, gently closed her book, and gazed at him with a composed yet attentive expression. Her calm demeanor seemed to highlight the turmoil within him. "Of course," she replied, as if she had been patiently anticipating this very moment. David took a seat across from her, desperately attempting to find the appropriate words. The palpable tension between them was almost unbearable. He recognized that he could no longer treat this marriage as a mere formality, a way to secure a financial victory based on Chloe's appearance. Something profound was irrevocably changing, and he was compelled to confront it head-on. "What are we truly doing here, Chloe?" he inquired with a sincerity that even astonished himself. "This commenced as a game, a wager based on appearances, but I no longer comprehend what to believe." Chloe stared at him for a few seconds before formulating her response. "I'm not playing, David. I never was." Her voice was calm but imbued with profound meaning. From the very beginning, I accepted this marriage for compelling reasons that transcend your understanding, and that have nothing to do with your perceptions of my physical form. I hold no interest in your financial resources or your desire to dominate situations. I'm present for something far more significant, and if you haven't yet comprehended that, perhaps it is past time to truly open your eyes. David felt a profound tightness in his chest. It was as if she were revealing a profound secret he remained utterly incapable of deciphering. Frustration consumed him. I acknowledge you possess your own hidden matters, Chloe, but what profoundly irritates me is that the more I strive to comprehend you, the more I realize I'm no longer in command. And I absolutely detest that. He abruptly stood up, unable to remain stationary, as if the immense weight of that revelation was simply too much to bear. Chloe remained perfectly composed, observing his every subtle movement. She slowly rose and advanced towards him, halting just a few inches away. David felt his heart race uncontrollably. "David," she began, her voice low and soft, "this isn't about control, or about superficial judgments. You have perpetually lived your life attempting to dominate everything and everyone. But with me, you'll have to learn that control is not invariably the solution. Sometimes, things simply need to exist as they are." David gazed into her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, he experienced a profound connection he had never before felt. It was as if, for the very first time, he was truly perceiving Chloe for who she authentically was, not merely as a disposable piece in his calculated game, chosen based on a prejudiced bet. "So, what is your desire?" he inquired, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. Chloe offered a mysterious smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "I desire you to discover that for yourself, David." And with that pronouncement, she walked away, her ample figure moving with a quiet dignity, leaving him utterly alone with his tumultuous thoughts. In the ensuing days, the emotional distance between them appeared to grow, yet in a peculiar way, David began to feel a deeper connection to Chloe than ever before. He became utterly consumed with the obsession of discerning what she was concealing, what her true underlying intentions were. Simultaneously, he felt as though he was profoundly losing control over himself. He vehemently resisted admitting it, but Chloe, the plus-size woman he had so carelessly wagered on, was undeniably altering his perception of the world, and the very notion that she could affect him so profoundly terrified him to his core. The 6 months of their marital agreement were rapidly drawing to a close, yet for David Sterling, each passing day felt like an agonizing eternity. He found it nearly impossible to sleep, the impending revelation he sensed he was on the verge of uncovering causing his stomach to churn ceaselessly. Chloe had transformed into an enigmatic presence in his life. He now considered her not merely as the woman he had wed on a wager involving her weight, but as an individual who possessed profound knowledge he remained utterly incapable of grasping. The obsession to fully comprehend Chloe consumed him entirely. He had exhausted every conceivable avenue to expose the secret she harbored, yet each answer he managed to unearth only led to a proliferation of additional questions. David retained private investigators, delved deeply into her past, and pursued every lead he could possibly uncover. Yet, every aspect seemed meticulously orchestrated by Chloe. It was as if she consistently remained 2 steps ahead, meticulously controlling the entire intricate game from its very inception. One particular night, following a protracted business meeting, David arrived at the penthouse later than his customary hour. The balcony light was illuminated, and there sat Chloe, her fuller silhouette visible against the city lights, gazing out over the sprawling New York cityscape like a sovereign monarch overseeing her vast dominion. He instinctively knew that this very night marked the moment when everything would finally be laid bare. David sensed she was prepared to disclose what he had so desperately yearned to know, yet the profound fear of what he might hear caused his throat to constrict painfully. He slowly advanced towards her, the distinct sound of his footsteps echoing in the hushed chamber. Chloe did not immediately turn. The atmosphere was profoundly heavy, almost as if both individuals instinctively comprehended that something devastating was on the verge of transpiring. "I demand answers, Chloe," David stated, his voice firm despite his accelerated heart rate. "I can't no longer endure this game. You must reveal the truth to me." Chloe sighed slowly and gracefully rose from her chair, turning to face him. Her eyes, typically calm and calculating, now gleamed with an emotion David found himself utterly unable to decipher. There was something novel in her gaze, something dark and fiercely intense. "The truth, David," she offered a bitter smile, crossing her arms. "Do you genuinely desire the truth?" He nodded without hesitation, but the palpable tension in the air intensified with each passing second. David braced himself for any conceivable answer, but nothing could have possibly prepared him for the profound revelation he was about to receive. "You possess no conception of who I truly am," Chloe began, her voice carrying a chilling coolness. "You have always perceived individuals as mere pawns on your strategic chessboard, and perhaps you judged me initially by my size, but this time, David, you were the pawn. I have been orchestrating this game from its very outset." David felt an involuntary shiver run down his spine. The unwavering certainty he had perpetually held regarding his absolute control was beginning to crumble directly before her. He attempted to speak, but Chloe did not permit it. "Do you recall the surname Adams?" she continued, her voice growing sharper. "Of course, you do not. Individuals like you never retain such details. My father owned a modest company, one that struggled desperately to survive, until your ruthless intervention utterly destroyed it." David recoiled, his eyes wide, his mind racing, desperately attempting to connect the disparate elements. "What?" David stammered, utterly confused. "What are you referring to?" Chloe took a decisive step towards him, her eyes burning with intense anger and profound pain. "My father, David, he was an honest man, struggling tirelessly to support our family, until you arrived and appropriated everything. You ruined him, David. He lost everything, and that insurmountable loss ultimately led to his demise." Chloe paused, her voice breaking for a fleeting moment before she resumed speaking, tears welling up in her eyes. "My father ended his own life because of your burgeoning empire, your relentless pursuit of success at any cost." The devastating impact of her words struck David like a brutal physical blow. He stood there, utterly frozen, as long-suppressed memories slowly resurfaced. There had been so many lucrative deals, so many binding contracts, so many lives profoundly affected by his grasping hands. He could not recall every single company he had mercilessly crushed to ascend to the pinnacle of his success, but now, suddenly, it was all returning to relentlessly haunt him. "Chloe," he attempted to interject, desperate, but she raised her hand, silencing him. "No," she exclaimed, her anger boiling over. "You possess no comprehension of the havoc you wrought. It's not merely about financial gain, David. It's about utterly destroyed lives. You took my father from me, the sole individual I possessed in this world, and while you prospered, my mother and I sank into overwhelming debt and despair. You lived your life immersed in luxury, and we scarcely had adequate sustenance. David was utterly stunned. He yearned to act, to offer a defense, but no words would emerge. All he could manage was to stand there, staring at her, as the immense weight of guilt pressed down relentlessly upon his chest. But I meticulously planned everything, Chloe continued, her tone now more controlled but still imbued with profound resentment. When I learned of your wager, your shallow bet based on a woman's appearance, I immediately recognized my opportunity. I deliberately approached you. I accepted the wager because I desired you to experience just a fraction of the agony I endured. I wanted you to comprehend what it feels like to be manipulated, played, and rendered utterly powerless, just as you did to my family. David felt his body tremble uncontrollably. He had always firmly believed he was in absolute control, always convinced he would emerge triumphant. But now, the tables had unequivocally turned. He was the targeted individual, and Chloe, the true orchestrator, was meticulously controlling the entire strategic board. Chloe, David began to speak, but his voice was weak. I did not know. I did not know you were, no, David. Chloe interrupted, stepping closer until she was directly face to face with him. You never knew because you never bothered to know. You mercilessly destroyed lives, David, and you did not even bother to acknowledge the individual standing in your path. I lost my baby, and you proceeded with your life as if nothing had ever transpired. Her words cut David like sharp knives. He desperately yearned to act, to articulate something that could possibly rectify his past actions, but he recognized that nothing he could say or do would ever erase the profound trauma Chloe had endured. I do not possess the words, David finally managed to articulate, his voice weak and laden with despair. I acknowledge that what I did is unforgivable, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But please, Chloe, I would undertake anything to attempt and rectify this, anything. Chloe observed him for an extended moment, and the profound silence that followed was exceptionally heavy. David knew that nothing he could say would ever bring back the baby or undo the past, but he was desperate to discover a means to at least alleviate some of the profound pain Chloe was experiencing. Finally, Chloe took a deep, shaky breath and closed her eyes, as if making an internal, momentous decision. When she reopened them, her expression had subtly transformed. The pain remained discernible, but there was something else present as well, something David found himself utterly unable to precisely identify. I do not know if I can forgive you, David, she stated honestly. What you did, what transpired, it was utterly devastating. But, she paused, as if meticulously weighing her subsequent words, I can perceive that you're genuinely attempting to change, and perhaps there's a slender chance that one day I can discover a way to move forward. But it will not be easy. It will not be swift. David nodded, feeling a complex mixture of nascent hope and lingering despair. He knew the path ahead would be exceptionally arduous, but at least Chloe was willing to contemplate the possibility of a different future. I will undertake whatever is necessary, David responded, his voice filled with resolute determination. No matter how long it takes, I'll prove to you that I've genuinely changed, that I can become someone you trust, someone you can, perhaps one day, forgive. Chloe looked at him, and for the very first time, there was a subtle opening. It was not complete forgiveness, it was not the eradication of all the profound hurt, but it was something. It was a beginning. We shall see, Chloe stated with a soft sigh. We shall see if you are capable." The profound silence that ensued between them was heavy, yet also profoundly imbued with possibilities. Chloe stood up and walked towards the portal, her ample figure moving with a newfound weariness, leaving David utterly alone on the couch. But this time, he did not experience the same crushing despair as before. He knew that a lengthy journey lay ahead, but at least now, a glimmer of hope existed. The days following Chloe's profound revelation proved utterly transformative for David. Every word she had uttered lingered with him, weighing heavily upon his mind as he grappled with the immense guilt for all the suffering he had inflicted. But instead of succumbing to regret, David resolved that this very pain and guilt would serve as his powerful impetus for profound transformation. He did not merely desire to reclaim Chloe's affection, he yearned to become a man truly worthy of her respect and the respect of the countless individuals he had callously harmed throughout his ruthless professional career. That morning, David made a firm decision. He would not simply stand idly by, permitting the past to eternally condemn him. He would commence anew, and the initial step would involve rectifying as much of the damage as he possibly could, to unequivocally demonstrate to Chloe that he had genuinely transformed. He began assiduously tracking down the families whose lives had been utterly devastated by his complex business dealings. His inaugural visit was to the family of a former competitor whose enterprise he had mercilessly ruined years prior. He arrived unannounced, knocking on the portal of a modest dwelling in a neighborhood that was a stark contrast to the opulence of his own existence. The man who answered the portal was a stranger to David, yet the profound pain reflected in his eyes was eerily familiar. "I'm David Sterling," David stated, his voice filled with a sincerity he barely recognized as his own. "I'm here to offer my sincerest apologies." The man stared at him for an extended moment, disbelief clearly etched upon his countenance. "Apologies?" he laughed bitterly. "What will that alter now?" "I cannot alter the past," David replied firmly, "but I can endeavor to assist in rebuilding the future. I'm here to offer compensation, to help rectify what I utterly destroyed." Over the subsequent weeks, David diligently continued his profound journey of redemption. He knocked on countless portals, engaged with numerous families, and offered not merely financial remuneration but his valuable time, his dedicated effort to genuinely comprehend the profound impact of his past actions. He began donating substantial sums to modest businesses that had been adversely affected by his corporate maneuvers, meticulously establishing recovery programs to empower other entrepreneurs to rebuild their shattered ventures. Chloe observed everything from a deliberate distance. Initially, she remained cautiously guarded, meticulously scrutinizing David's every behavior. She knew he was trying to change, but genuine forgiveness would not be easily granted. However, as the days passed and David unequivocally demonstrated a true and profound transformation, she began to experience something novel towards him, a renewed sense of respect and genuine admiration she had not anticipated. He was genuinely transforming, and he was undeniably proving that his previous words were no longer hollow pronouncements. One particular evening, Chloe stood on the balcony, observing the city lights, when David quietly approached her. He had just returned from another of his reconciliation visits, and his expression was now markedly different, calmer, more resolute. "How was it today?" Chloe asked, still gazing out at the distant horizon, her ample form a familiar silhouette in the dim light. David sighed, a profound exhalation that carried the cumulative weight of months of arduous effort and deep regret. "Tough," he admitted, "but absolutely necessary." Every conversation, every apology, it's a crucial step towards becoming a fundamentally better person, not just for you, Chloe, but for myself as well." She finally turned to look at him. There was something distinct in her gaze now as well. The unyielding hardness that had perpetually been present, the intense anger she had so steadfastly clung to, seemed to have perceptibly softened at that very moment. She perceived that David was genuinely transforming. He was no longer the arrogant individual who had entered her life propelled by a mere wager based on her plus-size appearance. He was someone actively striving to be different, someone profoundly willing to fight for their collective future. "I can perceive that, David," Chloe stated, her voice soft but firm. "And I want you to comprehend that I'm prepared to attempt. Perhaps it's time we relinquish the past and diligently construct something entirely new." David felt a wave of profound relief wash over him, a relief he had not even realized he had been desperately awaiting. Those words held more significance to him than he could have ever possibly imagined. Chloe was willing to grant them a genuine opportunity, not as a couple forcibly bound by a wager, but as two distinct individuals truly prepared to embark upon a new beginning. As the 6-month marital agreement drew to its conclusion, something truly astonishing began to transpire. Chloe and David drew closer, their conversations becoming less formal, less strained. They shared moments of genuine laughter and profound connection, and slowly, imperceptibly, affection began to blossom between them in a manner neither of them had ever anticipated. They were no longer the distant couple trapped within an arranged matrimony stemming from a bet about her weight. Now, they were two individuals genuinely rediscovering each other in a sincere, heartfelt manner. One particular night, as the 6-month period was nearing its end, David meticulously prepared a special evening meal. He knew this moment would be pivotal. They had traversed such a considerable distance, and he vehemently desired for their union not to terminate there. "Chloe," he stated during dinner, his voice filled with a nervousness he had not anticipated experiencing, "I acknowledge our agreement is nearing its completion, but I don't want this to end. I don't want us to end. I've fallen deeply in love with you, Chloe, truly, and I want us to continue, but now as a genuine couple, no wagers, no games, no superficial judgments." Chloe looked at him, surprised by the profound sincerity of his heartfelt words, but also with her heart perceptibly warmed. She realized she harbored genuine feelings for him as well, something that had quietly and steadily grown over the past several weeks, transcending any initial reservations she might have had based on how their relationship began. They had commenced as adversaries, but now, they were profoundly in love, in a deep and authentic manner. "I love you too, David," Chloe stated, her voice gentle yet firm. "And I wish to attempt. I wish to construct something meaningful with you, but this time as equals, as a real couple." Those moments were filled with unadulterated happiness for both of them. They had surmounted formidable obstacles that once seemed insurmountable, and now, they were prepared to advance together. Months later, Chloe began to discern something distinct about her physical being. She experienced morning nausea, a sensation she was unaccustomed to. It was not until after a thorough medical examination that she received definitive confirmation of her pregnancy. When Chloe informed David, his reaction was one of pure, unbridled joy. He embraced her, simultaneously laughing and weeping. Everything they had endured, all the past pain and heartache, now seemed to converge upon this singular moment of profound renewal. They were unequivocally prepared to embark upon a new life together, with a burgeoning family on the horizon. "I want to do this correctly this time," David stated, precisely comprehending his imperative next steps. "I want to marry you again, but this time for real, not because of a wager, not for any reason other than profoundly loving you and desiring to spend my entire life with you." Chloe smiled, her tears of happiness mingling with his own. "I want that too, David," she replied. "This time, it'll be a real wedding, a truly fresh beginning." Their new wedding was an intimate celebration, attended by a select few close friends and family members. No superficial glamour, no frantic rush from business commitments or past wagers based on prejudiced intentions. Just Chloe and David, united by authentic affection that had blossomed despite an unconventional start, prepared to confront the future together. David acknowledged he still had much to unequivocally prove, not merely to Chloe but also to himself and the families he had unjustly harmed in the past. But now, he possessed something profound to strive for, a new existence alongside the woman he deeply loved and the child they were eagerly anticipating. And this time, he was steadfastly determined to embody the man Chloe genuinely deserved and the father their child would truly require. As they gracefully danced slowly at the conclusion of the ceremony, Chloe rested her head upon David's chest and softly whispered, "Who could have ever imagined it all began with a wager?" David smiled, holding her close. "Who could have ever imagined it would prove to be the best bet I ever made?" And with a future brimming with affection, profound redemption, and unwavering hope, they were prepared for the next chapter of their shared lives. What is your assessment? Did Chloe make the judicious choice in forgiving and ultimately marrying David? Share your perspectives in the comments section. We eagerly await your opinion. Your engagement means a great deal to us. If this narrative resonated with your heart, do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories such as this. Thank you for watching.